Hello, good people out there in podcast world, cyber world, those who are just joining us. If you happen to be watching live, this is the God Pure Wisdom Show with one half your host, of course, Marcus Hart, and the other half he's joined with us as always on the phone. Good brother God Pure, brother Augustus V. How's it going?
Man, going good, brother. Doing well. Ready for another amazing show. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing outstanding. And it's very good to be joined with you today. And we got an awesome guest that I am just excited to be able to talk with too. Uh, the topic we're going to be getting off into today, it stems from like just the divorce rate, which is increasing rapidly. We're seeing further miscommunication and growing debate growing between man and women relationships, which has we know that like most of it is trauma induced, because trauma has ruled and dictated our much of our issues we are seeing more and more in our society when it comes to dating, marriage, and growing a family. So we're going to learn about this, and we're going to talk with a licensed family and marriage therapist today, who we want to bring on real briefly here. So before we get into that, just want to shout out our sponsors, North Bay Freight, for all that they do to provide these wonderful facilities here, and the encouragement that they gives us to continue to go further. North Bay Freight, on Facebook at North Bay Freight. If you're looking to drive behind the truck, go from East Coast to West Coast and tour the world and all that good stuff. North Bay Freight, they will hook you with a job or career, if you will, because they are hiring. And if you are shipping anything, North Bay Freight, send them a message. They will get back to you. And as always, shout out to Buck Wild T-shirts. Buck Wild T-shirts, go Bucks. Bucks did it in six, and now everybody's going Buck Wild. And speaking of going Buck Wild, as I was saying, trauma will have us going Buck Wild, or going wild, if you will. So let's bring over our guest for today. I said a few brief things about our guest. She has a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. So how's it going, Karen?
It's going great. Thank you, Marcus, for having me on. I'm super excited to be here with you.
It's great to be with you. So they heard me say some things briefly about you. How about you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And so my passion really is, and it seems to run right along with yours, is about transforming people's lives for to help people live their best lives because there's so much that life throws at us that really dims our light. And a lot of it is trauma related, and where a lot of times, there are people they tend to get into diagnoses and this, that, and the other. I tend to not like to get too much into diagnoses because we all have had life events that happen that the way
Right.
life events are stored that are less than pleasant is a whole different way. And what that does, like you mentioned in the intro, really affects everything from there on, like in our relationships and in families and dating and even in our work life and social life. So,
Right.
and it really doesn't have to take a lot to undo that as long as somebody is ready and willing.
Yeah. So like just from upon hearing this, and I know Augustus is on the phone with us. Augustus, and we definitely want to shout out those who are watching live. We got Tiana who's chimed in already. My single ears. Yeah, of course. So brother Augustus, from just the guise of the topic tonight, and the great body of work that Karen is putting in right now. What are your initial thoughts?
Yes, most definitely. Well, first of all, before I do get into the specific concerns and questions that I have, I would like to say first off, thank you for what you do. Your work is very needed, and in some cases, I think a little underappreciated. I think you guys should be more compensated and appreciated more than you guys are today. So thank you, first off.
And thank you, Augustus. I appreciate that.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
First off, I would like to ask, what led you specifically to enter this field of work?
Wow. Yeah, that's always a good question. It really came from seeing how my family was working and the intergenerational trauma that was just passed down from one person to the other, and how each person handled and dealt with that trauma that went from one generation to the next. And
Hmm.
I have, and then I think another part was when I heard about, and this might sound like something that's in left field, but when I
Hmm.
heard about the placebo effect, because I think also very
Mm,
holistically, yeah. And I
Mm.
thought, wow, how amazing are we as human beings? And
Hmm.
what can we do to tap into that space? And that's what I'm all about. Mm.
Mm. Wow. Okay.
I want to just stop right there and hold it right there with the placebo effect alone. Uh, and shout out to Gloria out there who says agreed. So the placebo effect, and and then hearing about you know generational uh, trauma being passed on, generational personal issues not being able to be resolved, and but someone will give you a pill or they'll give you a solution and say, here, take this, it will make it all better. And you will think it's actually the substance that's causing you to, like, really really put in the work. But we find out that, like, no, it's the power of the mind to really start making the shift to happen. And even with your own show, shift happens. so
Exactly.
so like so there's evidence that we can heal ourselves. So uh does but like what I have a problem with is that, like, you know we we sometimes do need someone to, like, help us, like, reach down and, like, tap into that ability. um has your work, like, really really opened that up more for you to really see that?
Yeah, and let me tell you what, Marcus. About 15 minutes, 15 years ago, I came across a modality that's called EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it's a very specific way of working with people and with the brain specifically to help basically melt away those frozen incidences where something happened that felt uncomfortable. We talk about big T traumas, which are the obvious ones, but little T traumas, like the bad argument that you had with your partner in the breakup, and all those different, you were bullied in school and all those kinds of things. They get frozen in the brain and then stored dysfunctionally with the negative beliefs that we attach to it in that moment. And that's how it's stored. And that's the negative beliefs that are driving the bus from our subconscious. Um, and causes us to continue to, it's almost like we recreate the same scenarios over and over again. And with EMDR, the beautiful thing is, I over the years, it seems to very consistently take 1 to 6 sessions of doing EMDR, and we've
Mhm.
resolved the majority of the things that are holding people back. So it's a complete shift in how the world looks, how the world feels, and how people operate in the world. And it's organic. It really is a beautiful process.
Okay. Now, brother Gus, I'm gonna go back to you, but before we do, we got Gloria, who's definitely cheering you on here, so, like, with some instant testimonial. She said, Karen, helped me melt away a pandemic trauma. She also said she had to have the support and counsel, or she'd be stuck in all areas of life. Which is, and she said without meds too, by the way. So love the process. So that's just great. That's great to just hear that report. instantly. So, brother, we heard about EMDR. We would definitely like to hear more about that going on. But do you have anything brimming on your brain right now?
Yes, yes, most definitely. With EMDR, I've actually looked into it, and it's quite rather impressive. Um, with your work and with the utilization of EMDR, what would you say this means for the future of counseling and psychology, if you will?
Yeah, I know that more and more therapists are using it. In fact, gosh, now I can't remember his name, but he was actually an economist, but he worked for the um, UNICEF and a lot of those big organizations. And when he came across EMDR, he learned about it, read about it, actually contacted Francine Shapiro, who was the creator of EMDR. And
Mm,
what he was saying was that this really is the tool that can resolve the big time trauma worldwide, because hurt brings on more hurt. Hurt people hurt people.
Right, right.
And
yeah.
there's so much, financial, sexual, racial, you name it, trauma in the world that uh, really is the root cause of, I think, the majority of our issues.
Mm,
So it's huge.
wow.
Mm.
Yeah. So like you just hearing how how revolutionary this is, and how much more driven does this type of because it's, in a sense it becomes another healing therapy, uh and another and a better method and process to use, you know so how much of it does it require additional maidens along the way afterwards, because like we know that, like, even after like a couple sessions of therapy, you still got to check in and get maidens here and there, and still put in the work, because, like, you're not just healed overnight.
Yeah, so a good question there. So with what happens when we do EMDR, that the specific incidences that we have worked on, they're good forever. I have people who've years said, I can still bring up that particular incident, and I have no upset about it at all whatsoever. So after that, then it's uh, more working on, it's so much simpler. Yeah, more working on maybe some communication skills, some listening skills, mindset. It's more tools and techniques after that. And it's more tweaking for the most part, of the people that I come into contact with. So everybody has their population that they're working with. So um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's very true. And what we end up finding out is that, uh, like, from what you are, like, specifically working on, you really specifically honing in on the triggers, and I think that's like one of the, like, biggest reasons why a lot of relationships become broken in the first place, because there's some of these, like, hidden triggers that you can't see, or you cannot, like, get out of a conversation when you first sit down with a person.
Yeah.
Sometimes these triggers don't come out until years later.
Yeah.
you know I mean, I'm not the expert here, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying from experience, from
Yeah.
being someone who have, like, gone through the trauma myself, and then find myself uh, learning what my triggers are, years later, like, oh, what, I didn't know this. uh, so do you come across, like, individuals who say, like, well, I didn't even know that I had these things that was triggering and causing this anxiety, or causing me to flash back like this, and take it out on my family.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other way around as well, when we have processed something, an incident, what oftentimes they say is that I had no idea that this incident that was when I was 12 years old, when this girl over there was laughing at me, whatever, that had this huge impact on my life now. So yeah, it goes both ways. Just because of the way that our minds are set up, our
Mhm.
brain is so good at compartmentalizing and putting things away so that we can function. And that's a great thing, except that sometimes our brain gets a little too good at compartmentalizing and storing things away, and we get a little too um, rewarded, if you will, to keep it that way and keep stuffing. This is why I talk about,
Yeah.
hey, many times instead of giving an official diagnosis, I like to say that majority of people are emotionally constipated.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And, and many times it is that people, we have all had previous relationships, the majority of us,
Mhm.
and where something obviously went wrong, or we would still be with that person. And then that is still stored in our brain and stored dysfunctionally and in the way that it does, along with all the yuck. And whenever it gets triggered, whatever it is that triggers are hair fine. It could be a smell, it could be a sound, it could be a look, it could be a word, it could be anything like that. And as soon as that trigger gets hit, then it is all of those events that are clumped together in our subconscious mind that gets replayed as though they're happening right now. And this is why there's that overreaction, which we can often be aware of ourselves, but it's like we can't stop it once it's going on. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And that's why, also, both in order to save the current or future relationships, but also if you have children or plan to have children, it is so important to really go ahead and clean out, if you will, those kinds of things that we have going on in our past, so that we don't, first of all, model poor relationships for our children, but
Mm.
also don't go ahead and pass it on to our children in how we interact with our children.
Mm.
Ooh.
Wow.
I hear
Positive.
you. I hear you saying, "Wow, Augustus." There's some. I know you got something that you got to say.
Yes, indeed. Man, so there's a couple of things I want to ask, but I'll try to sum it up in one question here. We know trauma is a big deal. We know it's been around for a while. Even just looking back in the history, whether the historical characters that we believe actually existed and those that we don't, we usually see trauma in just reoccurring uh, throughout life. But um, we know some people, they suffer from issues that aren't necessarily trauma based, like fear, some anxiety, depression, insecurities, things of that nature. And with people that come in with all of those issues as well as trauma, some having those issues and trauma, out of the percentage, would you say what percentage of the people that you've worked with and helped suffer from trauma opposed to the other issues?
Yeah, well, and here's where I talk about how a lot of people think of trauma as the big T traumas, like, being deployed and those kinds of things. But we
Hmm.
all have our little T traumas, which is often where that anxiety and depression stem from.
Hmm.
Um, and so I would say probably 99% of the people that I work with is some sort of trauma. Again, a lot of little T traumas can add up to a lot of issues that we end up with, feeling so overly self-conscious, feeling
Hmm.
Yeah.
depressed, being not motivated because, hey, what's the point? Because, I'm not going to make it anyway. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you know
Wow.
what's the sad part about that though? It's like when people have so many of these little T's, these little traumas. they will like totally discount those and say, hey, well, it's not as big as someone who's been sexually assaulted or someone who's been to the military, and therefore I don't need therapy. I don't need to talk to anyone. I just figure it out. I just go through the motions. What can we specifically say to those people today to just like, give them some extra encouragement and say, hey, we hear you too.
Yeah. Well, so one thing that happens when you go through this process is that life gets to be so much easier. The analogy I like to use is that before EMDR, it's like rowing against the current. It takes a lot of work. You put a lot of energy into it. There's a lot of overthinking, a lot of, have sleepless nights, all these different kinds of things. And after EMDR, it's like, well, we just turned the boat around and now we're just going downstream. It's
Right.
a lot easier.
Mm.
And it's short, it's quick. Yeah,
Mm.
the way that I work with people anyway. I just dive right in. I think people, they've suffered long enough, so I dive right in. I don't do a whole lot of preparation because it's like, are you ready? Let's go. Let's do this.
And have that Kleenex ready.
That's right.
That's how I know, I'm talking with someone good when they got the Kleenex ready.
Yeah.
You never know when you're gonna need it.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, man, I went through so many sessions, and I did cry, and then I said, oh, she has a Kleenex, and I'm about to cry.
That was a trigger in and of itself, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, brother
Yeah.
Gus, you got the question?
Yes, indeed. Man, so with everything that's going on today concerning relationships, one term, because we hear many terms that comes up when it comes to relationships and marriages. Most of them, in all essence, they're emotion based, and most of them are romance based. But one term that I haven't heard being referred to too much concerning marriages and relationships are traumas. See, so my question for you, seeing that this is your field and seeing that you do have experience and work in the field of marriage, what would you say are some of the effects, if not the major effects, that trauma has on marriages?
Huge. It can tear marriage apart because, again, we tend to kind of repeat or even recreate something that's happened before. It could be even something, let's just do an example. It's much easier to use specific examples. So let's say you were in a relationship where the other person cheated on you. And this is where the phones can come in, and like, if
This is a
you're
good one.
right.
I do this all the time.
Yeah. So, this is where the phone often comes in. It's like, oh, are you looking at your phone? Like, do you turn your phone over a little bit if your partner comes over? Is it, or are you perfectly open and fine with, yeah, grab my phone, take it, look up whatever.
Yeah.
And so if there's something like that going on, then all of a sudden, ding, now you're going, oh, what's going on? Why are they hiding their phone? And this, that, and the other. And then there's a fight. Then so what's going on? And there you go.
Yeah.
The scene is set.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really amazing because that phone is an issue in many relationships today. That phone, it can't come from God. It's I don't know who created the first phone, aside from Steve Jobs, or who brought the idea into this world. But oh man, yeah, that's very good.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, and that phone situation, it's really got me thinking that, like, that there's so many underlying triggers associated with, like, not only do you get the cue from the notification, because the notification is like a cue, instant cue.
Yep.
And it's like that Pavlo experiment. So,
Yeah.
you're creating a perfect scene here, and then it escalates and escalates and builds and builds
Yep.
until that person say, well, okay, what's really going on with this phone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. And it can go both ways, that maybe the other person is totally innocent, not even thinking about having an affair. It's not on the radar. And after maybe years of being accused of it, it's like, why not go out and do it?
Yeah.
right.
So, yeah, there you go. Now, the great thing is that when you have couples who are both ready, even in a situation, for example, where there has been an affair, I have had couples who came in and both were ready and committed to recommit to the marriage, and created a much better marriage after the affair than they had before. Many
Mm.
times, just because people, we can tend to get lazy in a relationship and take each other for granted and all that, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, I could have lost all this,
Hmm.
and this person is really precious and special, and that's really what it takes to keep that relationship alive and quality and connected. We have to stay on our toes in a relationship. Can't get lazy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I know we, very coming very close here, and like, man, we got to bring you back, Curran. I hope you would be willing to come back. You like we got, because this is not going to be enough.
Yeah.
I would be honored to be back. Thank you.
uh, Brother Gus,
Yes.
I'm going to let you ask, like, another question, but I got thousands actually. My head is like going my mind. Um, I'm really trying. This is an area I'm really trying to master. So, but brother, I'll let you ask the question. But before we get to your question, so we about being that we just coming close to the end here. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to tell you, if you haven't already, be sure to share the live stream. If you're watching live, if you happen to be watching on the recording too, this is the opportunity to take that share button, share it right now, and don't forget to like and comment. Okay, back over to you. This is
Yes, yes, yes. So, man, you're not lying, brother, with the questions, because I
Mhm.
feel like a kid in a toy store right now with all
Yeah, yeah.
the everything I want to ask. But I think, as we are closing, I think this will be a good one to ask. What is the out of all of the things that you've seen, and all of the changes and all of the improvements, what would you say is the most rewarding thing for you in this field? And what would you say to those that are considering getting into this field for themselves?
Mm, good question. So, for me, the big game changer was learning EMDR and just seeing how many times, even in the first session, that people, they're just sitting there. Wow, what just happened? What did you just do to me here?
Mm,
The weight is lifted off of them. They feel peace. They feel relaxed. They feel calm, and that's a high for me. I
mm,
love it. I love it.
wow.
Um, yeah, and for people who are considering to go into this field, it is very rewarding. You do have to do your own work, because if you're not doing your own work, I've heard too often clients who come to me and say that previous therapists, they spend a lot of their time talking about their problems to the client. I'm like, what? No, 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 no. No. We
Wow.
have to do our own work, because you can only
Yeah.
take people as far as you are yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's really, because it's a huge responsibility,
It
and these
is.
are people's lives that you have in their hand. And
Mhm.
so yeah, it's yeah, that's those are my final words.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
and just to mention here, like, as a note, you also are the author, coming real soon. Ladies and gentlemen, she's the author, that a book that be released September 2021 of this year, of course. So September, you got Achieving Peace, Purpose, and Prosperity. What can we expect from that book once it's available?
Yeah, so thank you for mentioning that. It's really taking my journey and how I put together how I work with people in a holistic manner. It's also a workbook. So as you are reading through, you can be working on your own things as you're reading through this book.
Okay.
So, yeah. And it pretty much wraps around everything that I do. And just to get you to a place where you can create your best life.
Cool. All right. So and then you have the radio talk show. Shift happens, and where can we, so are you still doing that show, or has it since ended?
It has ended, but my shows are available on my Facebook Shift Happens
Okay.
Facebook page, and they'll also be available on my website, which is currently in the process of being reconstructed.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, if yeah, we got to get you back on air. So like, so
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, or you can just contribute here, so we can have you just come contribute, like, there's so much stuff in mainstream news, and when people, they tend to compare themselves a lot to like a lot of these mainstream pop culture, couples, and like it gets real crazy with that, and um
yeah,
I mean, we know COVID. There was a lot of things, with happening with relationships, and I know that was a perfect opportunity for what triggers to just, to happen and come up, and people like, oh, who was this person? They didn't know who the heck they were dealing with. Once they came closer in these close quarters, and now everybody's just running wild rampant again, and trying to
yeah.
figure it all out again. So definitely want to like to talk to you again about this stuff and much more, so in a future episode.
Perfect.
So won't you tell us how, we will be able to find that book, or how we can get in touch with you, social media plugs, any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So you can reach me at my phone number is 386-848-5170. My website is insightscounselingcenter.com. I am on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, and also now on TikTok.
Oh,
and yeah, and my book is going to be available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
okay,
Wow.
outstanding. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we do appreciate you for tuning in with us today. You guys been an awesome audience, and you guys have made it this far. I know you feel very rewarded. Karen's been a wonderful gift to us today. I'm very happy to have had her. Me and Brother Augustus. Do check out all the plugs. We will have those links and much more in the playback of this episode recording. If you're watching it live and you want to, hey, what did she say? So we will get that information from her, and we'll put it in the episode description so you can hit the links, hit it on up. And when you do, and you say, she say, oh, how you find me? Tell her that the God Pill Wisdom Show sent you right on over. And by the way, um, make sure you do check out more God Pill episodes simply by heading over to transformyoupodcast.com, transformyoupodcast.com, or any podcast app that whatever your favorite podcast app is. And of course, shout out to our sponsors, North Bay Freight and Bug Wild T-shirts. That information is in the episode description as well as Brother Augustus Wisdom Library, which is augustusvaughn.com. So till next time, we're going to wave you guys goodbye. Many blessings, peace, and lots of love.